All right. Here we are with the next live stream. Please let me know if there's any trouble hearing me or anything like that. So, welcome everybody. Um, this week's topic is telepathy. Oh, where am I getting this sound from? Okay. Yeah, so this week's topic is telepathy. I'm going to try something different at the end of the stream today. I'm going to have a meditation, and if you're not watching it live, that's fine, but you can follow along with it later. And the aim of the meditation will be receiving higher telepathic communication yourself. So, without further ado, let's get into the discussion and analysis of some of these quotes. And these are all on my Instagram page. If you'd like to follow along during the week, the link's down in the description, and you can subscribe there and check them out as they come out. So, one of the characteristics distinguishing the group of servers and knowers is that the outer organization which holds them integrated is practically non-existent. They are held together by an inner structure of thought and by a telepathic medium of interrelation. The great ones, whom we all seek to serve, are thus linked, and can, at the slightest need and with the least expenditure of force, get en rapport with each other. They are all tuned to a particular vibration. In the new groups are collected together people who are very diverse in their nature, who are found upon different rays, who are of different nationalities, and who are each of them the product of widely varying environments and heredity. Besides these obvious factors which immediately attract attention, there is also to be found an equal diversity in the life experience of the souls concerned. The complexity of the problem is tremendously increased when one remembers the long road which each has traveled and the many factors emerging out of a dim and distant past which have contributed to make each person what he now is. When, therefore, one dwells on the barriers and difficulties supervening upon such diverse conditions, the question arises at once, what provides the common meeting ground, and what makes it possible to have an interplay between the minds involved? The answer to this question is of paramount importance, and the necessities are clear and necessitates a clear understanding. So, first of all, he's talking about this concept, a new group of world servers here. And that's basically, according to these writings in the past, there were people serving the spiritual logic masters or the hierarchy in working out God's plan, but they were sort of isolated and separate. There was, this group here and that group there, and they were sort of compartmentalized. But at a certain point in the, I think, 19th century, he was saying, possibly earlier, the new group of world servers came into play, at least on the inner levels, and that there was an inner sharing and connection between all these groups, even if they were working in different fields and areas. So that's what he's talking about by this group of world servers. And then he also references the great ones, which is the spiritual hierarchy, the lodge of masters, however you want to call them. And they're all telepathically linked. And like he says, they can get in touch at the slightest need or the slightest whim. But he talks about some of the difficulties in reaching kind of unity between us who are physically incarnated and working on the plan. That we all come from different backgrounds and have different temperaments and personalities, and even that our history and past lives, which has made us who we are, can be very different. And obviously he goes about detailing what can supervene these cleavages later on in the book. But my perspective on it is it's basically the higher self. And the more you can tune into the higher self and have all your personality stuff that's different and there's all these cleavages and stuff, the more that's subject to the soul, the more you can communicate rightly and harmoniously with other people who are also tuned into that. Because the soul is able to harmonize with other souls, whereas the personality isn't always able to do that. So move on to the next quote. And if anybody has any comments or questions, just post them in the chat, or comment them on the video afterwards, and I'll try to address those. So here we go. The undeveloped human being and the unthinking non-mental man or woman can be and often are telepathic, but the center through which they work is the solar plexus. The line of communication is therefore from solar plexus to solar plexus. This is therefore instinctual telepathy and concerns feeling in every case. It involves invariably radiation from the solar plexus, which in the case of the animal world serves usually as the instinctual brain. This type of telepathic communication is definitely a characteristic of the animal body of man, and one of the best illustrations of this telepathic rapport is that existing between a mother and her child. It is this type of telepathy which is predominantly present in the average spiritualistic seance. There, the medium quite unconsciously sets up a telepathic rapport with the people in the circle. Their feelings, worries, sorrows, and desires become apparent and form part of the reading, so-called. Both the sitter and the medium are functioning through the same center. With this class of medium, and in this type of seance, the highly intelligent and mentally polarized man or woman will learn nothing, and will probably receive no messages unless faked. Hence, therefore, when it comes to scientific investigation, scientific investigation by trained minds, physical phenomena has predominated and not the more subtle forms of psychism. Where the more subtle forms of super and extrasensory perception have been involved, the subjects have been either adolescent or in their early 20s and have been primarily and rightly focused in their emotional feeling body. This is true even when they are highly intellectual. So in this particular quote, the Tibetan's going on about how there's actually different forms or levels of psychic communication. There's not just ordinary communication and then psychic communication. There's ordinary communication, and then there's these other levels that are operating differently. And I think that's one thing people don't understand about impressions or psychic phenomenon is they're not all equally as good or equally as clear or effective. And so he's talking about the solar plexus center, the solar plexus chakra. And that's the one that's obviously by your solar plexus and between your heart and your sacral chakra, which is in the stomach. And that primarily has to do with emotion. So which is connected to the astral or emotional plane. So you'll have kind of this wavelength communicating through this emotional medium, but it won't necessarily be clear or accurate. And you might have stuff that's just not true coming through because it's things that people want to hear, or things that they're desiring or imagining. And the solar plexus telepathy communicates and is in touch with those things. Sometimes accurate things might come through in that regard, but usually there'll be at least some distortion or illusion involved. And he's also sort of alluding to that animals have a degree of telepathy in a similar way that functions through their solar plexus center. It's not really mental telepathy, it's more like emotional or instinctual. Okay. And the next quote we'll be analyzing is, okay. Later, when group work and telepathy is undertaken, the centers of transmission wherein high and consecrated feeling, devotion, aspiration, and love are concerned, and where the groups work with pure love, communication will be from heart to heart and from a group heart to another group heart. The phrase heart to heart talk, so often used, is usually a misnomer at this time, but will at some day be true. At present, it is usually a solar plexus conversation. So, by the way, if you're liking this video, please leave a like on it, help me out, and consider subscribing. So this sort of builds on what he was talking about in the last segment there, that real or our higher telepathy has to do with the heart center being awakened. And the heart center is kind of distinct from the solar plexus center. The whole solar plexus center is, like I was saying, concerned with emotion, but the heart is a higher octave than that. It might be hard for some people to understand the difference there. But the heart is more like you can still have compassion for somebody that hurt you or the ability to forgive, but the solar plexus center is more like I love you because you make me feel good, or something like that. Hope that explains that a little bit. But he's even talking about group telepathy, so from one group to another, um, and that there's a group heart, and those two particularly can perhaps communicate in the future. And we can't get too much into that, but the founding of spiritual groups in the sense of people that are working towards spiritual ends and working on a group level with the soul is something that'll come about more as the new age or the age of Aquarius unfolds. But if you can really, first you have to be centered enough in your own heart to be able to have a heart-to-heart communication with another person, whether it's verbally or telepathically. And with these groups in the future, if the members of the group are able to focus enough on the group heart, so to speak, then there can be a sharing there or communication. So that's one point of distinction of kind of higher telepathy, which involves the heart center, and lower, more psychic emotional telepathy, which involves the solar plexus center. And the next one we will be considering is right here. It is, however, now deemed possible to establish a resembling condition in a telepathic relationship between disciples on the physical plane. No matter where they may find themselves, this group of mystics and knowers will eventually find it feasible to communicate with one another, and frequently do even now. A basic mystical idea or some new revelation of truth is suddenly recognized by many and finds expression simultaneously through the medium of many minds. No one person can claim individual right to the enunciated principle or truth. Several minds have registered it. It is usually stated, however, in a wide generalization, that these people have tapped the inner thought currents or have responded to the play of the universal mind. Literally and technically, this is not so. The universal mind is tapped by some member of the planetary hierarchy according to his mental bias and equipment, and the immediate needs sensed by the working adepts. He then presents the new idea, new discovery, or the new revelation to the group of adepts, telepathically, of course, my brother. And when it has been discussed by them, he later presents it to his group of disciples. Among them, he will find one who responds more readily and intelligently than the others, and this one, through his clear thinking and the power of his formulated thought forms, can then influence other minds. These others grasp the concept as theirs. They seize upon it and work out into manifestation. Each regards it as his special privilege so to do, and because of this specializing faculty, and his automatically engendered responsibility, he throws back of it all the energy which is his and works and fights for his thought forms. So this is describing the sort of more subtle process of telepathic communication, that one of the masters taps into uh, an idea or an ideal from the sort of universal mind that meets the need of service of the time for humanity, or maybe a smaller group within humanity. And then he sort of discusses it with the other adepts or masters, um, and then presents it telepathically to his disciples. And one of them will pick up on it more clearly than the others and start to give it shape. And then I believe he's saying it will be picked up by the others too in time. And each of them will sort of think of it as perhaps theirs outwardly on a physical level, but it will be from a deeper source. So sometimes when you get inspirations, it might not just be like, oh, you just came up with it. It might actually be from this sort of chain of some ideal that's been stepped down through several layers, and then it eventually connects with your mind through your inclinations and biases. And it's something that you can work to fulfill your part of the great plan on. So, moving along, the final quote: all who seek to tread the path of discipleship are endeavoring to live in the head center, and through meditation to bring in the power of the soul. The problem which you face as disciples learning telepathic sensitivity is found on two things: upon which of the three bodies is the most active, thereby is indicated where you live subjectively most of the time; upon which center is the most expressive in your equipment, and through which you contact most easily the modern living conditions. I mean by these words where, literally speaking, your life energy is predominantly focused and your sentient energy expresses itself the most. An understanding of this will make you better able to work and to make intelligent experiments. Therefore, watch yourself with care, yet impersonally, and work out the why and the wherefore of the effects produced. For by this means you will learn. The third type of telepathic work is that from soul to soul. This is the highest type of telepathic work possible to humanity, and is that form of communication which has been responsible for all the inspirational writings of real power, the world scriptures, the illumined utterances, and the inspired speakers in the language of symbolism. It only becomes possible where there is an integrated personality and at the same time the power to focus oneself in the soul consciousness. The mind and the brain have at their same time to be brought into perfect rapport and alignment. It is my intention to elucidate further the science of communication, which started through the sense of touch and developed through sound, symbols, words, sentences, languages, writing, art, and again on the stage of higher symbols, vibratory contact, telepathy, inspiration, and illumination. I have, however, in the above dealt with the general outline, and we will take the specific details later. So he's saying in the first part, that you need to understand where you're at. Which of the three bodies are you most focused in? Are you most focused in the physical body? Are you most focused in the emotional or astral body? Are you most focused in the mental body? And which center in your equipment do you contact the world conditions, modern living conditions? So I think what he's saying here is, which chakra do you have your consciousness in the most? Are you mostly in the solar plexus center, the throat center, the head center? Um, so if you can understand those two things, you can understand your response to things. So if you're primarily in the solar plexus center, which is largely emotional, you'll have an emotional reaction to things. And you'll probably need to shift your focus out of that over time to a more mentally polarized center, like the throat center, maybe the heart center, the head center, the third eye. Um, and the same with your bodies. Like if you're in the mental body, you might be even too focused on that, and you need to focus a little more on the emotional body to sort of balance it out. because like he's saying later, you have to have an integrated personality for this soul to soul communication. Like your lower forces have to be largely in sync. The emotions have to be balanced, the mind has to be clear, the physical body has to be in decent physical condition. Not that you have to be like, running races or like lifting weights like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. But it has to be healthy in the sense that the energy can flow through it without unnecessarily impediments. And that's where soul to soul communication starts to be possible. And he makes the point that all the inspired writings or really powerful speakers throughout history have been from this kind of soul to soul communication. I guess the idea is that from a higher source, kind of like in that last quote, um, these ideals are downloaded or communicated to them from an even higher source than maybe they could ordinarily access. And they're able to convey something of real value to humanity or to a group of humanity. So I hope these comments or excerpts on telepathy have been helpful and elucidating. Please let me know if you thought anything was unclear or you have more questions or comments on what was useful to you. It'll help me going forward with these live streams to understand what the audience is looking for, where they're at. So let me just check. Okay. And I'd like to move into a kind of experiment in telepathy, sort of meditation, if you will. And if you're doing this later, that's fine. It's perfectly acceptable. But I'm going to pull up a background here that I want to use. It's of a mountain. Probably better than looking at my face. It's fun. Doesn't seem to be coming up. Okay, there it is. And I'm going to pull up this background and then we'll move into this meditation. Okay. So let's take about maybe 15 minutes. And some of it'll just be quiet for you to reflect, and I won't be doing any talking. But to start out with, allow yourself to relax, to wind down from any worries or thoughts or anxieties and get comfortable. And imagine you are at the base of a mountain and you slowly float to the top. And as you do, the stuff that trammels you or keeps you down from your daily life and outer affairs is slowly lessening and falling away. As you get to the mountaintop, the sky catches your attention, and slowly the great landscape of the sky becomes more present to you. And what the sky represents, the higher world, higher things, it meets your consciousness slowly but surely. And now just take a minute, imagine yourself sitting on a mountaintop and open yourself up to any higher telepathic communications from your soul, or angels or masters or whatever higher beings working through your soul might want to contact you. And so we'll take a few minutes with that and we'll see what comes through. Okay, we'll wind down here. Feel free to pause the video and take longer if you need. But I would be interested if anybody got any impressions or sensations that they're willing to share, to post it in the comments. Um, and with that, I think that'll do it for the week. I hope to see you guys next week, and